Welcome back to American Reacts. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Indigenous languages in Australia. This is from Wiltja Secondary College. Wiltja. I'm totally butchering that. I know I am. Apologize. That is the channel. This will be linked in the description down below so you can check it out. And I have to thank Trace from Discord for suggesting this and our video suggestion feed. So thank you, Trace. Let's get right to it. This sounds really interesting, and I would love to see how many languages either were spoken or currently are spoken around Australia amongst Indigenous cultures. From the little I know, the Indigenous culture in Australia looks amazing. Tons of interesting stories and culture, instruments, art style, all these things that I have seen just a glimpse of. Really, really fascinating. I would really like to learn some more about it for sure. So here we go. Let's get it started.
Warning, this video contains images and voices of people who have passed away.
Wei, nyoro valya, kulilaya, ngelo wari yanganjara, manana yanganjara wanga bay, tugur ban yangaja, ngana ba wanga, toda jara, palyo.
Wow.
There were an estimated 250 languages that were spoken on this continent prior to the
250.
establishment of Australia by European settlers.
Look at that. Wow. Look at all those different regions and
In addition, there
languages. That's fascinating. Wow. I mean, spread everywhere too. Everywhere. Down to Tasmania, up over here on that part that juts out into the ocean there. Wow, I can't unfortunately read the names of most
were
of them.
around 600 dialects.
600 dialects as well. Wow, that's incredible.
There is not a consensus about how many indigenous languages are currently spoken.
There we go, there's a list.
No one knows the exact statistics on indigenous.
Incredible language. I cannot begin to try and even attempt to read those. But what a fascinating list. I'm going to rewind it just a second here.
Languages are currently spoken. No one knows the exact statistics on indigenous languages because people have debated over this endlessly. However, it has been thought only a fraction of the original 250 indigenous languages are still spoken daily.
That's a shame.
Linguists estimate that 160 indigenous languages are currently extinct, 70 are under threat, and only 20 are likely to survive in short term.
Wow, that's a big fraction gone. I don't know exact numbers. I know here in Americas, it's kind of a similar story with, unfortunately, a lot of languages being lost over time. And again, I'm very, very fascinated by Native Indigenous American cultures as well. When we were on holiday in New Mexico, we were around the regions like the Comanches, the Navajo, and even the Piro Mantotiwas. They were around Las Cruces area and Mesilla, New Mexico. And that's why I want to try my best to learn about indigenous cultures in Australia as well.
There's a famous saying that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. On technical grounds, you can't always tell the difference. What's a language? What's a dialect? If languages are, mutually understandable, so you'd say that in a way Pitjantjatjara and Yunpinjatjara are dialects of the same language because they can understand each other.
Yeah.
Whereas Arabana is a different language because those speakers can't understand Arabana, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that way. So you test on how close they are, but other tests are more the political.
Linguists believe that indigenous languages are not being practiced as much in communities and other places by younger people. This is because they are tending to speak more English, and their native language is no longer their first language. English takes over Aboriginal languages. In many missions, indigenous people were unfortunate as they were prohibited to speak or learn in their native language.
Wow.
As a result, Many of these languages have become extinct over a long period of time.
That's terrible. being forced to speak something else other than your native language that you were supposed to be raised on, and then over time having that just fade away is a tragedy. There's no other way to put it. There's just no other
Well,
way
there's
to put
one
it.
called language shift, and that's when a group of people shift, say, historically here in Australia, those West Coast mob shift to English. So then people stop speaking Mirning or Gugara or, say, Wuramu. They kept speaking Kugara, kept going because of, Yalata people, Uldia people and desert peoples. But they shift, so they just stop speaking it. The kids don't speak it. So that's one of the main mechanisms for it. You can have loss of population, loss of speakers, or you can have people just not speaking it and not passing it on. So that's one of the main ones we talk about.
We need to.
In many cases,
Hopefully, whatever is left can be preserved. That's the most important thing right here. It has to be preserved.
In many cases, languages have been documented by missionaries, linguists, and anthropologists. Missionaries tried hard to document the languages in order to understand one another and to convert people to their religion. For example, Bidindara was recorded by the Presbyterian missionaries when the mission was established in Annabella in 1937. This mission was different as it allowed children to learn in their own language. The Ghana language became extinct for almost 100 years and has recently been revived from a document of only 2,000 words recorded by earlier South Australian missionaries. From this, linguists were able to revive the language.
I mean, that's cool.
This is in contrast to Bidindara, a language which has many books, dictionaries, a grammar, and thousands of video and audio recordings.
I mean, that's
Do you think it's
somewhat good to hear. I mean, we all know you can't really spin what's happened over time into a positive. So I'm definitely not doing that because it's not. But I'm glad to hear at least that languages can be revived in certain cases. Because I was going to say it earlier, not only should they be preserved, but I wish a lot of it could be revived, correct? In itself, it is a good thing and cool to hear.
good idea that it does preserve language over time?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's not just language. When you talk about language, you're also talking about culture and identity.
That's right.
And it's been seen over and over again that people that lose language lose a strong sense of that culture and identity.
That's the tragedy part. Yeah.
And you think about, Pidindara and the idea of chukurpa, or the law.
Yeah.
If you lose the language is how the chukurpa, or the law, is transmitted from person to person. And so if you lose the language, you lose chukurpa, and that would be devastating for Anangu people as a whole. And I think not just for Anangu people, I think for people like me as well. Because we lose, when a group loses their language and identity, everybody loses something, because we can all learn from each language and from each group of people. They all have something to share with us.
Yeah.
And if you lose that, it's a real tragedy, I think.
There has been an endless debate about how many Indigenous languages are still spoken in Australia today. There were 250 Aboriginal languages present to the arrival of European settlers, but there has been a rapid decline in these Indigenous languages throughout Australia. There are 30 strong languages that are still spoken daily, and over 100 which are critically endangered. Languages that have been recently revived are most likely different to how they used to be when they were actively spoken. I personally believe that keeping languages active is the most important thing to Aboriginal people. Because
Definitely.
speaking your own language clearly gives you a sense of identity.
Yes.
My language is Yankunytjatjara, a strong language that is spoken in my everyday life. Maybe it will change over time. My hope is that all Indigenous languages over Australia remain strong and active. Because
Awesome.
if we lose our languages, we also lose our connection to our homelands and the world as we know it.
Great points. Great points, Aden. That's exactly right. Language, culture is an umbrella term, right? It is a lot of things can make up a culture. But cultures are what's most important because the world is so diverse and it's full of so many different cultures. And one of the bases or pillars of culture is language. One of your first identifiers, maybe, right, of a certain culture is language. Language is definitely something that needs to be respected, needs to be preserved, but really revived when possible. But also, as he mentioned, when they're revived, it is a good step, but it also still may not be totally correct to, whenever it was last spoken. I'm sure there's still bits and pieces that are going to be different and slightly lost or what have you. But yeah, good on you for that video. Big thumbs up. Yes, and I believe that is our roll credits. It is. Cool music. Cool music, by the way. Cool music. So that will be the end of that one. I hope you did enjoy that. If you would like to weigh in the comments, please comment down below. And if you are watching this and you can speak maybe a language that was mentioned in this video or have an Indigenous language that you are keeping alive, first of all, awesome. Keep it alive. Do everything you can. Comment below. Tell me about it. I would love to hear it. This, of course, just scratches the surface. I have a lot to learn about Australia in its greater history. And, I don't know much. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what I'm talking about at all because I don't. I'm trying to learn. I can just say, like what was mentioned at the end of the video, that I do have the utmost hope that things continue to go in a better direction. Honestly, for all of humanity, but especially with preserving cultures that have been unfortunately lost and diminished over time. It is truly a tragedy when more and more parts of culture, and especially language, start to fade away or get diminished. So we have to do whatever we can to preserve and revive what we can when it comes to amazingly rich cultures like these Indigenous languages in Australia. So this will be linked in the description down below. Make sure to check it out. Make sure to throw a thumbs up on this video for learning, or do me a favor and just click on their video in the description. Go ahead and throw them a thumbs up. That works too. As always, subscribe for more stuff like this. My name is Ian. You are watching IWrocker, and until next time, guys, I'll catch you later.